and welcome to North Country Matters. My name is Jenna Boss, and I'm a student majoring in social documentation here at Clarkson University. Today we will take an in-depth look at Potsdam Central School's proposed 2013-14 budget. Joining us is Potsdam School Superintendent Pat Brady. He will outline the budget issues facing the school district with Ann Carvill, a former Potsdam Board of Education member and a member of the St. Lawrence County Branch of AAUW. Take it away, Ann.
Thank you, Jenna. Appreciate it. First of all, Pat, thanks so much for coming over. We always appreciate having you here.
Well, thanks for having me.
Okay. First, let's get on to a topic we've all been reading about, state aid to schools. A spokesman for the School Boards Association was quoted as saying, the legislature and the governor really did provide for schools. $1 billion in this economy on top of last year is a significant increase. In all, $21 billion is being spent by New York State on education for the next school year. Would you talk to us a little bit about the aid that Potsdam Central is getting and how that's changed over the years?
Well, those numbers sound large to the wider audience. They're in terms of overall aid in the state to schools. But you also have to temper with the fact that most school districts in the state, about 80%, are receiving less aid now than they did before the Great Recession started in 2008. And Potsdam is no different. We're receiving $1.1 million less now than we received in 2008-09, and the cost of everything, as you know, has continued to go up, you know, for the most part.
Right.
You know, the good news is in this budget, of the last 5 budgets, we are receiving more aid than we have in those previous budgets. And so we were in a position that we could add back a few more positions that we had scheduled to cut. But the fact of the matter is we have lost over $9 million in aid that should have been coming to our district over the last few years. That doesn't take into effect the Committee on Fiscal Equity case, which the state has ignored for the past few years during this economic crisis because they don't have the money. And that would have been another $4 billion towards education that would have been coming the way of school districts. And right now our gap elimination adjustment, which is the money that's been cut from our school this year, is still $1.5 million. So it sounds like an increase, but actually it's a reduction of the decrease we've been dealing with for the past number of years.
Lesser decrease.
It's a lesser decrease.
Okay.
So we're happy that it isn't as, we didn't receive flat aid for the most part like we did last year or cuts in the past. So we received about $397,000 more dollars from the governor's proposal in this final state budget. So that overall is our picture there. Plus, we were able to receive about $100,000 in bullet or targeted aid that Assemblywoman Russell was able to secure for us. So we're very happy about that.
Okay, great. Now, Pat, every year since the Great Recession, those of us who are paying attention to what's going on in education have been reading the newspaper and watching to see what's cut. Of course, there have been deep cuts. I believe Potsdam Central has lost 15% of its faculty since the Great Recession. I know things changed just recently with the board and some decisions that have been made. As of now, what will need to be cut? What is being planned to be cut from Potsdam Central for the next school year? The big things, yeah.
Right. Let me start with what was on the list and then go to what we've restored and what we have left.
Okay.
Originally, because we were facing over $1 million deficit, largely due to the increases in health insurance and pension, which I'm sure we'll want to talk about, we had 11.5 position cuts. Okay. And we, as you say, we've already lost 40 positions in the last 4 years, 40 positions out of our staff. It's actually close to 18% of our staff that because of the economic situation. So we had on the list a full social studies teacher, a science teacher, an English language arts teacher, a math teacher, so one from each of the 4 core areas, a music teacher, originally 2 elementary. Because of attrition, we have a couple of retirements. We'd restored one of those earlier. but we still had one on the list, a physical education teacher in elementary summer school. Those were what was originally there. Since we did secure more additional state aid from what the governor proposed, we have added back in the half of, well, actually now the full social studies position, and half of the music position, and the physical education position. We've added back in the elementary summer school and the elementary teacher. We've also had on the cut list to cut a half of foreign language. That's been added back in. Half of the music position has been added back in as well. And half of the ELA teacher has been added back in, and the full science. So and we had a cashier also, and a cafeteria monitor that was on the list as well. Those two positions remain on the list. So the 11.5 positions, we were able to restore 5.5, and there's still 6 that are out there.
Okay, well, that's certainly unfortunate because you've lost so many positions over the last 5 years anyway. Right. Pat, if we could move on a little bit to long-term solutions and mandate relief. Rick Timms, you know him, the executive director of the statewide school finance consortium, said the state aid increase will help minimize the hit that schools are taking for this upcoming school year. But he said in the long term, it won't help with long-term solutions. You yourself were quoted in a local newspaper as saying, we need mandate relief and other long-term solutions. What mandate relief is needed, and what long-term solutions are you alluding to?
Well, when we look at mandate relief, and I know the governor had put together a mandate relief council last year. They came out with a preliminary report this past December, and this upcoming year they're supposed to come out with a final report. You know, unfortunately right now we have not seen much in the way of large mandate relief. We are happy in this legislative budget that schools under 1,500 students will no longer need internal auditors. It was going to be 1,000, under 1,000, which we wouldn't have benefited from in Potsdam. As you know from being on the board before, we are already audited by the external auditor every year. We have a claims auditor, and every 5 years the comptroller comes in and audits, and we had this internal auditor. We're just, because of, because of other people's bad doings, corruption in other areas, all schools were affected by that. So we are happy to see that one mandate go. But other than that, it hasn't. And so you have to look at what are the cost drivers. And when you look at health insurance, and health insurance being $5.3 million of a $27 million budget in our district, 20%, one in every $5 that we spend is going now towards health insurance. And that's not sustainable, and we do need relief there. It's unfortunate that everyone locally is trying to solve this problem at the local bargaining table or at the local municipality and school district, when it is a national and state problem. Medical costs have just have skyrocketed, and so we do need some reliefs from that, whether it's creating more universal plans, or whether it's creating a set consistent contribution that everyone has to pay. That's an area we do need some help.
Can I just jump in at that point, Pat? Because as you say, $1 in $5 is being spent on health insurance. And you say it's a big problem. We all know that, statewide, national. But yet when Tom Burns was here, he was saying that because we don't have much political clout, it appears we're going to have to solve our own problems. And you seem to be suggesting that the big boys and girls need to step in and help solve this huge problem. Realistically, where are things headed? What is likely to happen?
Well, realistically, New York, these are labor-driven decisions. Unless you can get the medical industry to there needs to be reform in the medical industry to drive down some of these costs. I know our local Sorsham deals directly with the hospitals and with doctors to try to set rates and bargain, and that works to some degree. There's a relationship there, but the cost of health insurance in itself is a problem. But on the other side, if we don't control that, so what can you do at the local level is to try to bargain for some more employee contribution or a change in plan, which will allow for savings through higher, co-pays when someone goes to the doctor or to the hospital. And those are labor issues, and our political leaders have not wanted so far to take on those types of issues. And unless they do, then we're going to continue to see those costs go up.
And it'll be the rural, high needs and average needs schools that will be the ones suffering, in my estimation, with not having the dollars to keep on enough faculty to teach the students what they need to learn.
Right, because those are the schools that don't have the money, and they also don't have the money to go to the bargaining table in order to gain these concessions on health insurance, because it is a negotiation. So if you're coming in without any money to negotiate and you're asking for a concession, that's a challenging proposition.
Well, it's interesting, Pat. You're sitting here at Clarkson University, and of course the economy of Potsdam is very dependent on the success of our two universities,
Absolutely.
Potsdam State and Clarkson University. At the same time, there's a symbiotic relationship between the universities and the K-12 buildings, schooling, because to draw good faculty members, they want to know that the school that you're running is a good school.
Right.
So if we keep bleeding teachers and keep getting rid of more faculty and keep losing programs, then in point of fact, it hurts way more than our students, the faculty that's laid off. There are much bigger consequences. Would you agree?
I certainly agree with that, and I think when people move to the North Country, whether they be here for the colleges or for any other reason, but the colleges are certainly an engine that drives people to the North Country, as well as the hospital with doctors, and they've done a good job recruiting people in. They look at the quality of the schools for their students, and so they look at the facilities, they look at the curriculum and class size, and they want to know that they're going to get a quality education. Now, we provide a quality education at Potsdam, and I'm proud of the hard work and dedication of our staff and our students, and through it all, we've been able to still keep most of our AP courses, our Syracuse University Project Advanced courses, and a variety of extracurriculars and sports and music. But we come to a tipping point, and if that can't be sustained, then it's a community issue. It's not a school issue. This is a community issue, and those colleges are part of the community. Now, they've been stepping up, and we've worked with Clarkson University. President Collins has allowed more of our students to go to Clarkson here, which is very beneficial to them. And a group of community parents, they're not all from Clarkson, but there was Genesis was largely from here, started a foundation, the Potsdam Educational Opportunity Fund, which we've received some anonymous donations, which is really taking off, and so that will help to bring some money in. And Potsdam State has also been great as well in students being able to go to school there, and we have teachers coming into our classrooms, and it's a good relationship.
Pat, I just read in the paper this morning that Corning gave $3.2 million to the public schools in Corning.
That's nice.
Wouldn't it be nice if there were some highly successful businesses that would, consider the needs of local schools up here?
Well, hopefully some of them are watching this interview, and they would appreciate their donation.
So, Pat, is there anything else you wanted to say on the issue of long-term fiscal solutions, or had you covered that?
Well, the other part beyond health insurance is the pension. And so this year, our health insurance costs are going up over about $550,000. That's just in 1 year, and then the pension cost on top of that is going up another over $300,000. And there was some, in this legislative proposal, there was some idea of some pension smoothing, at this point, it doesn't look like we'll be able to take advantage of that. Partly because there's interest involved in it, and we're going to have to pay back the same amount of money down the road, but with interest, and so that's not real mandate relief.
Right.
We have with these costs going up, and we're paying for employee retirement system over 20% of our payroll, and with teacher retirement system next year to go up to 16.25%. These increases are like giving almost a 4.5% raise without any
without a raise coming in the paycheck.
Without a raise coming in the paycheck.
Right.
But that's the cost of the school district. And there's many who now, under the old tiers, don't have to pay anything into their retirement system. They had to pay 3% for 10 years, and then after 10 years of work, then they don't have to. The new Tier 6 will they'll have to pay, the rates now are between 3% and 6% based on what their salary is. And they'll pay that throughout their working lives. But it's going to be a generation before we see that benefit when that group of people retire. So that's a big issue for us.
And we don't have a generation to fix what's happened to local schools.
We don't.
No,
we don't.
So something's got to happen.
Those would be the two. There's others, but those are the two biggest ones.
Okay. The budget for the next school year, Pat, 13-14. How much is the board and you coming out with as the budget that you're asking the public to approve?
The budget that we presented at the Finance Committee meeting on Tuesday is a $27.2 million budget. It increases less than 2%. It's 1.91% increase in our budget, even with the adding back in those positions, because we're using 3.9, it's actually 3.9% tax levy, and 1.58 million in fund balance. But the budget itself is 27.2.
Okay, I'm glad that you mentioned the 3.9 tax levy. As you know, there's been some recent concerns by taxpayers in Potsdam because their homes have been revalued and their businesses. I was at the town meeting the other night where about 100 people showed up, as I say, businessmen and homeowners, to talk about the impact. It seems like many of them say that they've been raised 15, 20, some as high as 60%. It's been huge increases. My question to you is, are you concerned that this revaluation will have an impact on the voting public when it comes to your budget?
I'm very concerned about that that issue. Anytime there's a reval, it's not an easy prospect. But what we're hearing out there is that there's some real concern over the reval with the percentages, and so people will go through a process. They'll meet with their assessor, and there's grievance day, and there's that whole process. But we found in the past that one valve for redress of grievances, unfortunately, is the school budget. The community doesn't vote on the town budget. They don't vote on the village budget. They don't vote on the county budget, but they vote on the school budget. And it comes at the same time that they're going through a grievance process because they're concerned about their tax assessment. And we found that out in 2008. You were on the board at that time. It was one of the more difficult years that we had, and that was before the recession started. People were very concerned about their assessments. And so we ended up losing that budget twice. But there's a difference now. The difference is, under the old law, under the contingency cap, we could have actually presented a budget after it was voted down that was greater than the budget that the public voted down. We wouldn't do that. We wouldn't have done that because we want the public to support us. But now, under the new tax cap law, if the budget gets voted down, the district can't raise anything over what they raised last year. So that means that we would have to go back in and find another about $500,000, which would come out mostly cuts. We go back, and anything we've added back in for science position, for or for music, or for any of those other positions that we've added back in for students, would be gone. And so I guess my message there would be, I ask that the community take a step back and and understand that, and I think because we have a community that understands education, that what the district's been through over the last 5 years. Mm-hmm. And we actually have a tax rate right now in 12-13 that's lower than it was in 04-05. You know, so we have a lower tax rate than we had in 04-05 mm-hmm. right now. And we've tried our best, even through the struggles, we understand the tax issue and trying to keep that down. Mm-hmm. But to vote the budget down for something that we as a district don't control is going to be very challenging, and is going to lead to less programs for students. It's going to lead to more people being laid off and on unemployment. The other point I guess I would make is that with the reval, like we saw last time, the tax rate for the school district went down 11% with the reval. Mm-hmm. So it doesn't necessarily mean that if your assessment went up, that you're going to be paying significant increases. In fact, sometimes there may be a decrease with some people in their school taxes. So I guess I ask that they just look at all of the factors before they make a decision.
Okay, Pat, would you clarify a point that you just brought up about the tax cap? Yeah. The New York State has a 2% tax cap law aimed at protecting taxpayers from excessive taxation. Will Potsdam Central be in compliance with this law with the 3.9% tax increase?
We will be in compliance with the law. Actually, the maximum tax levy increase that the district could have used this upcoming year was 4.75%, not 2%. Mm-hmm. And it's an 8-part formula, and largely the reason it's not 2% as it was last year, and last year we landed right on 2% was the tax cap. This year it's 4.75, and the main part for that difference is the rise in pension costs. You can subtract out some of the pension cost increase in the formula, okay. But that's not the tax rate that even before the reval hit the press. We weren't looking at a 4.75%. We were looking at a 3.9%.
Okay. You understand, though, that it's very confusing to the public, and it's certainly been sold to the public 2%. And so when people in your position or people running the town or et cetera say 2% really isn't 2%, it's confusing to the public. And don't you think it's unfortunate that it's been sold as a very simplistic thing, but it's actually quite complicated?
We knew that was going to happen from the beginning, and it was sold originally as a 2% tax cap. That's what the public has emblazoned in their mind, that it's 2%. And for the reasons I outlined, it's not. And even if it's not, we still, I think if you look at where we've been over the number of years, even through this struggle, we've tried to keep that tax rate down. We understand where the taxes are in Potsdam.
Okay. Pat, onto the issue of, we have about 5 minutes, of the cost drivers, which you brought up earlier. Cost of personnel at the school, $6.9 million, health insurance, $5.3 million, retiree pensions, and a few other items there, $2.7 million. So it was reported out from Potsdam Central that within 4 years the benefits are going to cost more than the salaries. And so as you said earlier, that's unsustainable. In the conversation I just had with officials from Norfolk, they were talking about other ways to address the health insurance issue. And one of the things they suggested was finding a broader group to unite with, either an adjacent district, BOCES district, or other districts from around the state. What, do you see the possibility of anything productive happening soon to alleviate this issue with the spiraling costs of health insurance?
I think those are areas we certainly should explore. Is broadening out the consortium. It depends what the experience of those other areas are. You certainly don't want to bring in people who have a
really sick people,
right, a bad experience over time with the amount of healthcare costs. Right. But it is an area to explore. It's like I said in the beginning, if we could spread out costs over a wider group across the state, there is the potential then to save money to bring down these costs. So that is an area to explore. I think what you're going to see schools starting to do, and I think it's been somewhat of the plan of the state, is they're going to be looking at mergers and those types of consolidations as a way to survive. Because we've gone the shared service. We're sharing a lot of services. We're sharing our building and grounds administrator with Norwood, and we're sharing our food service director with Parishville, and we're sharing a music teacher with Norwood, and we're sharing with BOCES account clerk, and those are just a few that come to mind. But that's savings. It's good savings. But when you are continuing to see these bumps in health insurance and pension, you just can't, and not getting the state aid that we are supposed to get. That we have to bring those costs down, and so I think that's more of an area that's going to end up being explored.
Now, Pat, within the area of mergers, which of course would save money, is it accurate that both school districts have to vote to agree on it? And so if the voters in districts don't agree to merge, then it doesn't happen. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Even if it's a wise thing to do and well explained, you may have one of the two districts say, no, we don't want that.
Right. It's about a 2-year process, and it begins with two boards deciding that this is what they need to do, and it leads to a study. And the study is you can apply to the Department of State to get money for the study, and so the study is done, and it gives you an idea. Is it something that's feasible to do? But even if it is feasible to do, both communities do have to support. There was a merger recently that went down because it was, I think, 4 districts were going to merge, and one of them didn't vote for it. So
there you go.
It was.
It falls apart.
It all fell apart. Yeah.
Pat, we're down to approximately a minute or so left, and so I wonder if you could share with those who might be watching this, when do we vote on the budget? And you may have some closing comments on issues that I didn't ask you about. So would you like to take a minute or two and wrap up?
Sure. The budget vote is May 21st at the high school auditorium. It's all day. And certainly the voting inspectors will tell you it is all day. It's 6 in the morning till 9 at night. So that's May 21st. And we ask that over the course of the next month, the board will pass a budget on the 22nd of April. So this isn't quite finished yet. And you may have read there were some concerns. We're bringing back half a music position, but there was concern in the community that we're not bringing back a full music position. I think that may be our last question of the budget to answer, whether because music has been such a key part of our history and what makes part of what makes Potsdam special. So I think there's going to be some more discussion on that piece of it. But the 22nd of this month, the board will vote, and then for the next month, we'll be presenting a lot of information out to the public. We ask that they come to the meetings and take all of what we say into consideration before they vote on the 21st.
Well, is that it, Pat?
Yeah, I think so. I would just, as I reiterate that, despite it all, we do have, Potsdam continues to be a premier school. We have a lot to offer our students, and we have some hard decisions to make in the future, but we have a great community that supports education, and I don't think that will change.
Okay, well, thank you so much for coming over
good.
once again. As I said before, we really appreciate it, and I'm sure the public will appreciate the information you've shared.
Okay.
Thanks.
Thanks very much.
All right, that wraps up our show. These WCKN Conversations are a production of North Country Matters, produced in the studios of WCKN on the campus of Clarkson University. This show is a civic collaboration between the St. Lawrence County Branch of the American Association of University Women, the St. Lawrence County League of Women Voters, and the mass media and communication students at Clarkson University. Thank you.